All right, we are in Unit 2, Topic 2. This time we're talking about disease and specifically infectious versus non-infectious diseases because we are looking at this distinguished dot point. Now, disease is basically any kind of condition that's impairing the normal function of an organism. And I'm not saying people because it can be, plants, whatever it is. This is about abnormality or dysfunction, and we can also use the word pathology to describe that. They can be picked up in a number of different ways. You can get them from your family members, from your, in terms of genetics and inheriting a disease, or it can be acquired throughout an organism's lifetime. So we're talking about, deficiencies in some kind of nutrient, eating disorders, mental illness, some kind of tumor, infectious disease, whatever it is. And really what we are trying to do is look at the difference between infectious and non-infectious here. So we're going to use lots of different terminology, and communicable means it is contagious, okay? It is spread between different organisms. The opposite, well, it's not the opposite, but a different way to classify that is infectious, and it's caused by some kind of pathogenic molecule or organism like bacteria, okay? All contagious diseases are infectious, but not all infectious diseases are contagious. So it's hard to kind of really think about how we would classify that, but if we're talking about, say, an infectious disease that is not contagious, you might be talking about like, I've got food poisoning of something. So while I'm not necessarily going to give it to anybody else, it is still caused by an organism. So again, we can go a little bit deeper into this and say, all right, if we're talking non-infectious, then these are not communicable, they are not contagious, and they are not caused by a pathogenic organism or molecule. So we are talking about things that are passed down from our family, inherited diseases, nutritional deficiencies. You're not passing that on if you don't have enough vitamin C, lifestyle diseases. We're talking about obesity, type 2 diabetes, things like that. And then the opposite here is infectious. It is mostly communicable. It is mostly a contagious type of disease. It is caused by that pathogenic molecule or organism. And we can be talking about lots of different pathogenic molecules or organisms like these ones, and we'll get into that a bit later on. So some non-infectious hereditary disorders, you would have heard of plenty of them. They're caused by inheriting certain genetic material from one or both parents. They're present at birth. And really what we can do is treat the symptoms. There are lots of different ways we can look at stem cell therapies and things to change that. But really at this point in time, changing your genetics just isn't a possibility. So we're talking about sickle cell anemia. We could be talking about Down syndrome. You could be talking about haemophilia. There's also cystic fibrosis. There's plenty of them, and I imagine you can think of some. Non-infectious, we're still talking non-infectious. These are nutritional deficiencies. So it's a deficiency of some kind of nutrient, mineral, vitamin, whatever it is. And really the treatment is to add in the missing nutrient, although the damage can be really irreversible depending on how long a person has been living with this. There are lots of different kinds of deficiencies and therefore lots of different symptoms. So the one on the end there is scurvy, and it makes your gums bleed. And really it is a deficiency in vitamin C. We can have anemia, which is a lack of iron. You can have rickets, which is a lack of vitamin D, and kwashiorkor, which is a protein deficiency. All right, eating disorders are also non-infectious. Their causes are generally pretty complex and unknown. Anorexia nervosa, bulimia, obesity, those kinds of things are considered to fit into this category. There's lots of treatment programs that can exist, but everyone is going to be different, so they can have variable success. Non-infectious, we're talking environmental diseases caused by factors in the person's environment. So mesothelioma might be inhalation from asbestos. It gets into your lungs, can cause a lot of damage there. Even asthma, exposure to airborne particles can cause that. When we talk lifestyle disease, it's brought on by choices made in your actual life. Now, I've seen Biozone describe these as diseases of affluence, as opposed to poverty diseases like things like nutritional deficiency. So you might be talking heart disease, type 2 diabetes, poor diet, lack of exercise, smoking, all those kinds of things. We know, hopefully, that there are many different types of mental illnesses with a variety of symptoms. There's a lot of risk factors. It could be social isolation, trauma, chemical imbalances in brains, drugs, lots of things. Some treatable with medication and cognitive therapies. Non-infectious, still there. Cancerous changes, we're not going to catch them from anybody, but really what is going on in our body is that a tumor cell forms and then multiply out of control. So our body deals with this all the time. There are ways in which our body can recognize them and clear them, and there are others that will go on uncontrolled and unchecked, basically. There are lots of known causes, UV exposure, skin cancers, smoking, lung cancers, we understand that. Lots of different treatments, chemotherapy, radiation therapy. All right, I'm going to get into the infectious disorders, and there's some pretty gross pictures, let's be honest. All right, we're talking infectious bacterial diseases here, and bacteria are microscopic, right? We can't see them, but we will see the outcomes. We can have them invade body tissues, do some damage. They can have toxins. They can break down things with enzymes. They can be treated with antibiotics most of the time, but our symptoms are going to vary greatly. We're talking, these are available in plants too. There are plant bacterial diseases. There's acne. We can fill our lungs up if we get pneumonia. Tetanus causes a lot of rigidity in the body. Gangrene means our limbs can start to rot away, and botulism is often caused by very old canned food, which is very unpleasant. Viral infections, these are a bit trickier because these are submicroscopic. They can only be viewed with an electron microscope. They don't respond to things like antibiotics. That is for living organisms. Viruses are not necessarily considered that. And what these do are they invade the host cell and use that host cell to reproduce. So it's like using your own body against you. They're generally species specific. So very rarely are they crossing. They're not treatable by antibiotics, as I said, and the symptoms are going to vary quite a lot. There are a lot of different viruses, plants, animals, fungi, protists, bacteria, everything, right? We could be talking about measles, which is unfortunately coming back at the moment, cold sores, influenza, HIV, which eventually can lead to AIDS, glandular fever, and smallpox, very unpleasant. All right, fungal infections are microscopic. Some fungi live in your mouth, vagina, digestive system at all times without causing any harm. And mostly this is where, they will invade if there is a new opportunistic situation where your skin is opened up or something like that. Most are treatable with fungicides. They occur in both animals and plants. Tinea, it's pretty gross on your toes. Ringworm, very unpleasant. Thrush, nail rot, and jock rot, which is very unpleasant as well. All right, infectious, we're talking parasites and protozoa. So in this situation, you are seeing they are macroscopic. You will be able to see them. This is a parasite that is moving amongst blood cells. They're found inside and outside the body. Symptoms are going to vary pretty substantially, but we might be talking worms in tropical areas or tiny little mites or bugs or ticks or fleas or leeches and things like that. So we need to be able to distinguish between infectious and non-infectious, so making sure we understand those specific terminology.